The Jets are expected to have multiple trade partners lining up for Zach Wilson. I want to take a look at 3 likely landing spots for the former number 2 overall pick.
Jets!
Before we hop into the video, I want to tell you guys about an awesome thing we got going on over at the Talkin' Jets channel. Myself, O'Leary, and Greenbean hosting our 5th Talkin' Jets draft party. This time we are doing a live in-person draft event. That's right. We are pumped about this. We got crowd cams going. We're going to have a ton of people there getting the reactions, all the thoughts about our number 10 overall pick. We got a 3-hour open bar, buffet, everything going on. Bunch of giveaways, raffles, things of that nature. So if you want to check that out, get your tickets while they're still hot. TalkinJets.com. And yeah, we'll see you there. But let's move on to our topic of the day, and that is 3 landing spots for Zach Wilson. Multiple suitors interested in the former number 2 overall pick. So I want to take a look at the post that got this all started, and then we will take a look at my 3 teams that I think Zach Wilson could end up on, and that makes the most sense. So without further ado, this is coming from U Stadium. Source: Zach Wilson will have multiple suitors this offseason. According to sources, the New York Jets are expected to have multiple teams inquire about quarterback Zach Wilson once the offseason kicks off. Wilson and the Jets have agreed it is best to split up this offseason, and the team will look to find the best situation for the former number 2 overall pick. When asked what the Jets could get back in a deal, the same source told us a day 3 pick or a swap of mid-rounders. Right off the bat, I'll tell you this. It's not you, it's me. Yeah, of course the Jets are moving on from Zach Wilson. They got issues with him. He's got issues with us. It's just cleaner to separate the whole thing altogether. Now, as far as the compensation goes, 1, I love that multiple teams could be involved because that only helps elevate the price as best we can. And as far as mid-round picks versus, maybe a swap of picks, day 3, what they're saying in terms of day 3 picks, day 1 of the draft is round 1. Day 2 of the draft is rounds 2 and 3. Day 3 would be rounds 4, 5, 6, 7. So could the Jets end up getting one of those day 3 picks, or maybe some type of pick swap? Maybe the Jets want to throw in a 4th round pick or a 6th round pick or whatever to try and elevate the draft pick that they would get in return for Zach Wilson. Now, Trey Lance, who was taken 1 pick behind Zach Wilson, went to Dallas for a 4th round pick. And I think there's there's a little bit of concern for me that the 4th round pick for Trey Lance was because they didn't know what Trey Lance was. He's been injured. He's got some high upside, but they don't really know what Trey Lance actually is. And they had him for 2 years, year 3 and year 4 on his contract, where whoever is getting Zach Wilson is going to have to deal with him year 4 and then his 5th year option if they wanted to do that. I don't think anyone's actually exercising his 5th year option. So you're talking 1 year of Zach Wilson potentially. But it's something to get into. Do you think the sample size of Zach Wilson is just, it's been so bad because the Jets are incompetent and can't obviously develop a quarterback? Or do you think the Jets have actually done enough and Zach Wilson is just a bad quarterback? Either way, I think there's some opportunity here for the New York Jets. I have been saying for a while that I think the Jets planned on trading Zach Wilson this offseason regardless of how he looked this year. They were just hoping to have him sit behind Aaron Rodgers for a year. Aaron Rodgers is only going to commit to 1 season, and then he'll come back at the end of the year and say, oh, you know what? I've decided I've had this new passion for New York City. I want to go on, play another 2 years, which was the whole plan the entire time. But now they'll be like, oh, we're not giving up on Zach Wilson because he's bad. We're giving up on Zach Wilson and trading him so he could have an opportunity elsewhere because the Hall of Fame quarterback is committing to the New York Jets. And that was going to be their shield. Unfortunately, Aaron Rodgers wound up going down, and Zach had to play all season, which ultimately I think is going to hurt our draft stock. I don't know if we're necessarily getting a better situation with Zach Wilson after what we've seen this past year. But I want to talk about the 3 teams that I think should be in play for the New York Jets that make the most sense to me. And you guys can let me know what your 3 teams down below in the comment section are. Let me know what my 3 teams are, if they rank better or worse. But before I hop into those 3 comments, I do want to thank the sponsor of the channel, SKG Tax. The New York Jets practice and play in New Jersey. This tax season, Jet fans may struggle with their state tax identity. If you are a Jet fan and can't determine how to file your taxes, call JR the Tax Czar and address all your multi-state tax questions. Don't go on the road as a wild card filer. Hire yourself a CPA and defend your home turf. Thank you so much for sponsoring the channel. Without further ado, let's hop into my 3 teams. At number 3 overall, I'm going to say the San Francisco 49ers. They are my number 3 overall pick. Obviously, they got Kyle Shanahan, the quarterback guru, over in San Francisco. They have no backups under contract for 2024 right now. Sam Darnold and, who's their other guy? I'm drawing a blank right now. Brandon Allen? Is that right? I don't know if that's the right name. But either way, both their quarterbacks are not under contract for 2024. They do have Brock Purdy, but I could understand if they wanted to add another young gun behind him that they could at least try to groom and develop and maybe flip into a draft pick. Now, they wanted him in 2021. That was something that was talked about. They traded all the way up to number 3, from number 11 up to number 3 or 12 up to number 3, gave up 3 first-round picks, and man, I'm going to tell you, I really wish the Jets had traded back with them at that point in time. The Dolphins set themselves up beautifully with that particular trade. Obviously, we have the Robert Saleh connection with the 49ers coaching staff in our building, so maybe there's some type of dialogue that goes on between them. And the biggest thing for me, the 49ers have a ton of draft picks. They have 2 picks in the 3rd, 4th, 5th, 6th, and 7th round, so they are pig rich in all these draft picks. Would they be willing to give up a slightly higher pick in a draft that they have so many draft picks to get a quarterback that they loved, they coveted at the time of the NFL draft? I think it's a possibility. I would really like to see him end up over there. Now, part of me doesn't want to see him end up over there. One, because if he winds up doing well, then it just shows our incompetence, across the board. And then I guess number 2, maybe because he has some inside knowledge, Shanahan with the, Saleh connection, maybe they're just saying, nope, don't do it. Don't even look this direction. I find it hard to believe. I think Shanahan would want to try and reclaim a player that he thought was worthy of that number 3 overall selection at the time. The same way he rumored to have wanted Sam Darnold, ultimately wound up with Sam Darnold this past year. Maybe that's a good landing spot for Zach. At number 2, I'm going to say the Denver Broncos. This one's a little bit outside the park, but let's talk about it a little bit. Sean Payton, obviously offensive-minded head coach. There were comparisons when Zach was coming out to that of Drew Brees. Strong arm, but not. I think they would say Zach was the better athlete, where, maybe the height and whatnot was a little bit more in line with what Drew Brees was. I don't really know. But Sean Payton has that legacy of, hey, I took someone off the scrap heap and I turned them into an MVP, Super Bowl MVP, Super Bowl champion quarterback, and Drew Brees is one of the best quarterbacks of all time. I could do that with Zach Wilson. He's got an ego, Mr. Sean Payton does. And then, of course, maybe his predecessor, Mr. Nathaniel Hackett, maybe there's a little bit of salt in the wound that you could do if you wind up turning Zach into a good quarterback and ultimately, make Hackett not look so good either. Sean Payton did have comments on Fox News or Fox Sports last year when Zach got benched, where he said, I think he could reclaim the starting role. I think it's just going to take a little bit of time. So maybe there's that little bit of confidence in Zach Wilson from that point of view. Now, maybe that's changed in the year that we got to see Zach this season. Now, the other part of this is that they are going to cut Russell Wilson. Russell Wilson is their starting quarterback this year, and they are going to need some level of competition, and they are already over the salary cap. They're $24 million over the salary cap now, and Russell Wilson's going to be an $80 million dead cap hit. So if they designate him a June 1st cap hit, and they split that $80 million over 2 years, it's going to still put them over $60 million for this season, and they're going to have to figure out a way to get down that salary cap. And maybe trading for Zach Wilson for a draft pick might not be the worst way to do it. The Jets could help facilitate it, where they eat a little bit of the contract, gives them a favorable deal on their end. And look, if he booms, then he's booming with a roster that doesn't have the talent because they've had to cut so many draft picks, and then you feel good about Zach. If he busts, then you have a terrible roster that, with a quarterback that's earned us some pretty high draft picks so far, you're probably sitting pretty if you're Denver with a top 5 pick if Zach Wilson's your starting quarterback and it does not work out. Now, they do have 2 5th-round picks, so maybe there's an option where the Jets can get one of those 5th-round picks for Zach Wilson if they can't wind up moving a little bit higher up there. Sean Payton's an interesting one. There's some players on that roster that I would really like. Like, I would be fine foregoing the draft pick, or I would even, eat salary and try to figure out some other stuff, because there's 2 players in particular that I really like on Denver that I would love to see in a New York Jet uniform. One of those is Garrett Bowles, their left tackle, who's a $16 million cap savings if they want to move on from him. He's only 32 years old. He would instantly be the best offensive tackle on the free agent market, but maybe there's a situation where the Jets could scoop in and take the salary off the Broncos' hands and hand them a little developmental quarterback instead of just cutting one of their players that they wanted. The other player I really like is Cortland Sutton, the wide receiver, 6'4". Oh man, I would love to have this dude. His contract is pretty favorable. It's 2 years, $13 and $13.5 million over the course of the next 2 seasons. So if you could get either one of those two players or some type of pick swap from Denver, I would be totally on board with this move. I'm a big fan of trying to get some of the assets from Denver. And then the number one spot that I think makes the most sense is Minnesota with the Vikings. Obviously, you have Kevin O'Connell over there as their head coach. He's coming from the Sean McVay coaching tree. McVay obviously has Mike LaFleur as his offensive assistant or offensive coordinator or whatever the hell they're calling him over there. So the same style of like quarterback nurturing style of system. McVay coming from the Shanahan coaching tree, so you see some of those connections as well. No Kirk Cousins on the roster for next year right now. He's coming back from a torn Achilles. He is a free agent. Not to mention, they just don't have an heir apparent behind him. Joshua Dobbs is going to be a free agent. Mullins is like, I think he's 30 some odd years old. He's not really young at this point, so he's not going to be the future. Could they draft someone? They're sitting at the number 11 pick right now, and they do have 2 picks in the 4th, 5th, and 6th round. So they got some ammo. Maybe they want to come up a little bit. Obviously, Jets are sitting at number 10. Vikings are at 11. You got Denver at 12 and Vegas sitting behind them at 13. Those 3 teams might be looking for a quarterback. It might be looking to trade up a little bit. Maybe there's a situation where the Jets can acquire some mid-round draft pick for Zach Wilson and only slide down 1 pick in the 1st round. Maybe that's a scenario that the Jets could work out where they get maybe call it a 3rd round pick or something like that. Now you're feeling real good about yourself. I don't know. I think the Vikings are a really interesting spot for Zach Wilson. I think it's the nurturing atmosphere. I think it's in with a team that he does not have to start with right away. I think they could still draft a quarterback, but I think this one to me provides the best starting potential of any of the teams that we've talked about. At San Francisco, he's not going to be starting. Brock Purdy's the starter there. I don't think he would be starting in Denver. I think he'd probably be some type of backup competition. But with Minnesota, I think there is a pathway for him to start. And you're throwing at Justin Jefferson. You got to be feeling pretty good about that if you wound up over there. Now, maybe Justin Jefferson is feeling a little bit of a different way having Zach Wilson throw him the ball. But I don't know. I'm a big fan of moving on from Zach Wilson. I think it's the right move for both sides. I've been saying I think the Jets will wind up getting a higher pick for Zach Wilson than all of us kind of think. Now, if you can pull off the Sam Darnold trade and get a 2nd round pick, I would kiss you square on the lips, Joe Douglas. Fingers crossed, right? Who knows? Maybe lightning strikes twice. Guys, let me know your thoughts, your top 3 landing spots for Zach Wilson down below in the comment section. What did you think of my top 3? Let me know in the comment section down below. And as always, go Jets.
Jets!